Ready 7:33. The world was first introduced to Irshad Manji when she released the international bestseller, The Trouble with Islam Today, a Muslim's call for reform in her faith. Now, Manji is still exploring her faith and its political impact on the world we live in today, but this time it's through the eye of a lens. Her latest documentary is called Faith Without Fear, and she joins me in studio this morning. Good morning, welcome.
Well, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's nice to have you here. You are a Muslim woman. You're a very spiritual woman. You're very deep. You've got a lot of thought and reflection on the world today, but you're still exploring this topic. Why are you still talking about this?
Oh, well, because the world is still talking about it, and I think that there is so much that we, both Muslim and non-Muslims, need to understand about each other. You know, among the beauties of being a Muslim woman living in the West, and I think you might be able to relate in some measure here, is that we've got our feet in both worlds. And so both Muslims and Muslims come to people like you and me, and especially, you know, being of the younger generation, to say, what's going on, but more importantly, what could be better? What is the potential for us to coexist, to intermingle, and so forth? And I know, for example, that the reasonable accommodation, you know, hearings are happening as we speak, and I think that that is a huge focus of them. So I believe that this documentary film, Faith Without Fear, which is the reason I'm here in Montreal today, will do a lot to shed light on what's going on in the world of Islam and its relationship to the West.
It's a topic that we're speaking about every day. More and more, many people are asking the same questions. We start off with the film with a glimpse into your life. You live in a bulletproof home. You lock your mailbox just to make sure you don't receive mail bombs. You live in a state of fear. Your mother is worried about you all the time, but still, you're still here talking about it.
Well, you know, what's interesting is that I personally do not live in a state of fear. Now, it's true that I live behind bulletproof windows and have lock boxes on my mailbox, but the reason for that is to protect the people inside the home. Fact is, I do get death threats quite regularly. But, you know, the reality also is that I walk my own city of Toronto relatively freely, and I refuse to give the enemies of reason and humanity more ammunition than they deserve. It is also true, as anybody who watches the documentary knows, that my mother, you know, she says she lives with her heart in her throat every single day. But again, she reminds me that just as much of grief that I've caused her, I've also given her a lot of pride. And I think that mothers around the world can relate to stubborn daughters who are on a mission to change the world, didn't they? They have no one but themselves to blame.
It's true. You know what I like about this documentary? I mean, I know you have read your work. I know you have strong opinions. And I know you really believe in what you believe in. But this documentary, you're still exploring. You're still open. And you're just asking questions and pondering what it is, what's the future of Islam. You speak with people who have had the courage to speak out. Ayaan Hirsi Ali, Salman Rushdie, people who are also sometimes living in fear, and you seek their advice. What was that like for you to speak with these people?
I have to tell you that probably the best piece of advice that I've gotten on this spiritual journey of mine came from Salman Rushdie, and I asked him at one point, why would you support a young Muslim woman in Canada writing the kind of book and doing the kind of film that might invite into her life the violence and chaos that's been visited upon yours? And without any hesitation, he replied, because a book and a film are more important than a life. Now, I laughed, thinking this guy is obviously poking fun at his security situation. He told me, no, this is very serious. Whenever an artist puts out a thought, it can be disagreed with vigorously, vehemently, even violently, but it cannot be unthought.
It cannot be unthought.
And that is the great permanent gift that the writer gives to the world.
Let's talk a little bit about being a Muslim in Canada. We're speaking about reasonable accommodation, the issue of women wearing veils and voting here in Canada came up very recently. There's a great quote in your film. You say, living with offense is the price of living in a diverse society. Tell me about that.
Well, simply that I think in a multicultural society, it is so easy to reduce diversity to what we look like, what we wear, what we believe. But you know, I think that's only superficial if it's there to protect religion and race. I think deeper diversity and much more interesting diversity also protects different viewpoints. And so why should I, as a Muslim woman, be forced, you know, to toe the line with the conservative elements of my community? Why can't I have viewpoints that actually surprise people simply because I'm a Muslim? So, you know, the whole point here is that let us not equate being offended with being discriminated against. From time to time, I will offend you, you will offend me. But this is what it means to live in a pluralistic society.
That's the gift of living in a diverse society.
And, you know, I love the fact that you use the word gift. That's exactly what it is. Because because we learn from people with whom we disagree, not from people with whom we agree.
Absolutely. Now, I know you've thoroughly explored the concept of what needs to change within Islam, but what needs to change within our own society, within our Canadian society, as we move and progress forward and take a look at our neighbors who may not look and speak the way we do?
Right. I think one of the big points that we have to understand about living in an open society is that it is our birthright to ask questions out loud, sometimes pointed questions, sometimes in public. And you know, one of the big questions that I explore in my work, for example, is why is it so easy to draw thousands of protesters into the streets to demonstrate against France's ban on the hijab, but very few protesters to demonstrate against Saudi Arabia's imposition of the hijab on women. Okay. In other words, I think we have to explore double standards, you know, and the only societies in which you can truly do that are open societies like ours. Let's not shy from doing that. Let's not censor ourselves from doing that simply because we fear offending the other. This is why I call my documentary Faith Without Fear. It's not just my fear that is being addressed of violence, for example. It is everybody's fear of offending the other.
Okay. Many women will enjoy this film very much, or will start thinking about different issues. What does it mean for you now that you've explored and taken time to really reflect as a Canadian Muslim woman? What is your state right now?
I am, it goes back to that word gift that you just mentioned. I am so grateful to be waking up every morning thanking God that I wound up in a part of the world, as a refugee, keep in mind, wound up in a part of the world where as a Muslim girl and now as a Muslim woman, I can dream big dreams and tap much, if not most, of my potential. And you know, young women like us in this part of the world, we have the freedom to think and express and challenge and be challenged without fear of government intimidation for doing so.
Many people take that for granted.
We sure do.
Yeah.
And I'm asking my fellow Muslims and now my neighbors, non-Muslims, what in God's name are we doing with this gift?
That's the question that we're asking this morning.
Let us use it.
Faith Without Fear. It's your latest film. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing your insight and for having the courage.
Thank you so much.
To come here and sit here and share what your deepest thoughts.
Well, and to my fellow Muslims, Ramadan Kareem, and you know, thank God we live in Canada.
All right. Bismillah Rahman Rahim. That's what my mother taught me. Always be grateful for what you have. We're going to take a short break here at This Morning Live. Coming up next, much more.